And here is the story of Ruth, a male adventurer wielding a large shield who takes on the role of a tank in his labyrinthine adventures. However, he doesn't do this for money or fame, but to save his young and very sick little sister. One day after an adventure, Ruth imagines seeing his sister again, but his companion, Nin, scolds him for daydreaming in the middle of the guild and suggests he should find a partner instead. Ruth apologizes, explaining that he can't stop thinking about his sister as she is his top priority. His little sister, Manisha, suffers from an incurable disease, and the only way to save her is to find the secret treasure in the labyrinth, which is said to grant wishes. Even though he apologized, he realized from yesterday's adventure that it would be impossible to do it again. Nin tries to comfort him, saying that Ruth has done his job well as a tank by holding off all the attacks, but Ruth feels sad because he lost his shield. Without understanding why, Ruth feels he burdens Nin, a healer. However, Nin reassures him, saying that Ruth has protected them well and she feels very safe with him. Moreover, his shield can absorb 99,999. While they were talking, Claus, the great hero, entered. The guild members comment that he has conquered many labyrinths despite his young age. Claus greets Nin and Ruth, who both return the greeting and notice that Claus has brought a group of girls with him. Claus introduces them as new members of his team. Nin protests that this is wrong because only 6 people can enter the labyrinth, and now with everyone, their number becomes 7. Jigla mocks them, saying that now their number is back to 6, and dismisses Ruth, claiming that Ruth is useless as a tank because he easily loses his shield and does not fully understand all its abilities. Nin tries to defend Ruth by saying that he has fulfilled his role as a tank, but Claus argues that since Ruth can't use his abilities well, he becomes a hindrance and could cause many problems in the future. Therefore, it is better to have a new member who is also a tank but a mysterious tank, which is more popular now because they can fight and dodge, unlike Ruth, who is just a regular tank without attacks. Ruth begins to hear everyone in the guild whispering about him and decides to accept it, so he leaves. However, before he can go, Claus approaches him to take his sword, feeling Ruth owes them because he couldn't win. The day before, Nin grabbed Ruth's arm while crying because she didn't want to part with him. Ruth told her that she didn't need to feel sad and reminded her that he had already told her about the village where he lived with his sister. He hoped Nin would visit him someday because from now on, he would be living closer to his sister. They parted on good terms. Sometime later, Ruth was in the middle of the city, sitting and thinking about what the hero had said. He didn't know what to do with all his abilities and wondered if he was using his shield incorrectly, making him a bad tank. However, since he hadn't found someone with the ability to identify and explain the functions of all his abilities, he didn't know what to do with them. Moreover, he couldn't return to Avancia where his sister was because he had no money. At that moment, he heard some people talking about an escort mission to Kira's city. Ruth felt happy because the city was close to Avancia and decided to talk to them, pleading to be allowed to join their mission even without payment. They asked about his rank because he looked very strong. While they were only rank D, Ruth thought about what to say, as he was rank F because he had never left the labyrinth. However, at that moment, they recognized him as an adventurer who had once joined the heroes group and immediately accepted him. At that point, an old man who was giving the mission arrived and asked if they were ready to depart. The kids excitedly said yes and that they had a new member. Ruth introduced himself, and the old man accepted, although he wouldn't pay more than the agreed amount. The journey began normally, and although Ruth felt like he was deceiving them by not revealing his true rank, he promised to protect them until they reached their destination. During the journey, they talked and rested at night. After a few days, the road was filled with fog. The old man asked if they should rest, but Ruth suggested continuing because they were very close to the city and needed to arrive as soon as possible. However, he sensed something and thought it would be better to ask them to stop. Ruth got down to check who was ahead as it could be bandits, and as the fog slightly cleared, he saw that it was a girl who had fallen on the ground. Ruth checked the surroundings and realized that there was no one else around, understanding that it wasn't a trap. He approached the girl to ask how she was. The girl tried to get up, but a gust of wind moved her cloak, revealing that she had a magical rune embedded in her chest. Ruth recognized the rune but didn't have time to say anything because a forest serpent appeared behind the girl. He ordered her to hide while the other children were terrified at the sight of such a huge monster. Ruth saw that the snake was focusing on the children and used one of his abilities to provoke the monster, causing it to attack him instead. Ruth defended himself with his shield against the poison spewed by the snake and reassured the children not to worry as he would hold off the monster while they attacked. However, the children were so scared that they doubted they could do it. At that moment, the snake moved and attacked them, throwing Ruth against a tree and causing him to lose consciousness. In his unconscious state, he saw his sister crying and calling out to him, which made him decide to get up and stand again. He then told the children that he didn't have a sword, so he couldn't attack, but he promised to withstand all the attacks so they could use all their strength to strike the snake. The children were motivated, and Ruth started running, promising that as the strongest tank, he wouldn't let anyone get hurt, and he believed they would succeed in defeating the monster. The children took advantage of the opportunity while Ruth was holding off the snake to attack and wound it. The monster then began gathering energy for a deadly attack, and Ruth decided not to dodge. Since it was a deadly attack, his duty as a tank was to stop it. Using his shield, he managed to block the snake's attack. At the same time, the children decided to use their maximum power to attack the snake together, and they successfully defeated it. Ruth praised them for their good teamwork and then went to check on the girl, feeling relieved to know she was alright and asking what she would do now since she had been running from the snake. The girl said she had nowhere to go, so Ruth invited her to come with him. The girl was impressed and accepted his invitation, then took his hand. However, Ruth knew they couldn't take her with them dressed as she was. Then, an old man came and brought a dress, saying the girl could wear it as a form of thanks for protecting them, as they wouldn't have survived the snake without Ruth. Ruth accepted and told the girl to change clothes. The girl went a little distance away, and the old man told Ruth that she was an escaped slave. Ruth knew because she was a homunculus and a human slave, although they never traveled alone, and something must have happened to her for her to be there. Additionally, she doesn't wear a slave necklace, and Ruth decides to protect her, something heard by the girl, and she is very happy to hear it. The next day, they arrive at the city entrance, and Ruth decides to part ways with them as he is heading elsewhere. The children, before leaving, ask if he wants to join their group because they don't have a strong tank and want to work together. Ruth thanks them for their offer but declines because he has to search for secret treasure. The children acknowledge that they have heard about this and know that the treasure can grant one wish, although the girls also comment that the treasure also provides technology to create homunculi. The three children begin to talk about this. They say they don't like homunculi because they are just simple slaves without feelings, and this starts making the girl near Ruth feel uncomfortable, so Ruth decides to change the subject and bid them farewell. After walking for a while, he introduces himself to the girl and asks for her name. The girl says she doesn't have a name, and Ruth, observing her, decides to give her a fitting name. So, recalling the flower petals called Luna, he decides to name her Luna. The girl hears it and likes the name, so she decides to accept it. After walking all day, they decide to rest at night. After eating something, they prepare to sleep. However, suddenly, 3 wolves appear to attack them out of nowhere. Luna grabs the knife on the ground and quickly cuts the 3 wolves without any trouble. Ruth is surprised and understands that Luna is an illegally made homunculus because she has her own will and feelings, and can even fight and use magic, something other homunculi cannot do. Although illegal homunculi are usually eliminated, Luna manages to escape for some reason. Luna apologizes for ruining the rest of the evening meal, and Ruth asks her if she's so strong, and why didn't she eliminate the snakes. Luna explains that she doesn't have close combat fighting skills, but her ability is magic. Ruth is surprised and asks what those abilities are. Luna says she can enhance her magic power, have support abilities, and also have identification abilities. Ruth is surprised to hear that because she only knows one person in the kingdom who has identification abilities, who died some time ago, which means currently only Luna has that ability because it's very difficult to obtain. Ruth then takes advantage of this opportunity and asks Luna to identify his abilities. The girl says it's okay because it's her job and asks for his hand to do it. Luna concentrates and begins to glow, then says that Ruth has 4 abilities. The first is a provocation, which makes opponents concentrate and attack him. The second is a healthy body, which makes him immune to negative or poisonous effects and enhances his healing abilities. Ruth knows about these 2 abilities but doesn't know the other 2 abilities. Luna says the next ability is vital conversion, an ability that allows turning lost defense into physical strength, boosting his statistics. Ruth understands that it is an ability that can be used as an attack and cause damage. Luna agrees and says that as her ultimate ability, she has a sacrifice shield that allows her to absorb damage received by her teammates as if it were her own, and using this ability increases her strength. The more damage absorbed, Ruth realizes that he has indeed been using the ability all along but not understanding it, but now it will be easier for him to use it properly, and he is very grateful to Luna for her help. The next day, they arrive in Bansha, and Ruth feels very motivated. Previously, he was expelled from the group because he didn't know his ability, but now that he knows how strong he is, he will show that he has a lot to offer and that he can be much stronger than any hero because he has a promise to fulfill to his sister. Upon arriving in Bansha, Ruth is greeted by 2 girls, one named Milna, who is the daughter of the village blacksmith, and the other named Phil, who is the second in command of the village army. Ruth asks the girls about the condition of his sister, and they confirm that she is okay. In addition, the entire village has been watching over her while she is away, which makes Ruth feel more at ease because he knows that they did not leave him alone while he was busy. Then, he decides to introduce Luna to them, who is quite afraid because she doesn't interact with others too much, But after talking for a while, she feels more at ease and can talk to the girls. After a while, they arrive at Ruth's house, who tells Luna that they have to be quiet because his sister might be sleeping. But then Ruth smells a very familiar scent because it's the aroma of one of his favorite dishes. So he goes to the living room and sees that Manisha has prepared his favorite dish. Ruth is very excited to see his sister again because she still looks as beautiful as before she left. Manisha welcomes him and welcomes him back home. Then she asks who the girl is, and Ruth introduces them and explains to his sister that he decided to bring Luna home because he found her on the road and because she had nowhere else to go. He decided to help her. Manisha understands and tells them to sit down and eat because she will prepare an extra dish for Luna. Ruth tries to stop her because she is sick, so there is no need to cook more, but Manisha explains that today she feels very good and can do it. Then Luna, curious, asks why Manisha's hair is moving so much. Ruth explains that some people have physical uniqueness and their hair moves according to their mood. He decides to ask his sister if it's because her ability senses that she will return exactly on that day, something confirmed by the girl. And that's why she decided to prepare her favorite dish. She prepared another plate and everyone sat down together to eat. Luna, who was excited, began eating, but Manisha asked why she was using the spoon in such a strange way. Luna felt embarrassed and let go of her spoon, letting it fall to the floor. Then she bent down and apologized to them because she didn't know how to use eating utensils properly since she could only use them a few times, and at that moment, she remembered her past as a slave when she tried to eat with some slaves. Ruth tried to help her, but Manisha approached the girl, then grabbed her hand, and told her that she didn't need to apologize for something so simple. But she gave her a spoon and taught her how to use it, promising that while they were at her home, she would teach her everything she needed to learn. This delighted Luna, and Ruth felt proud seeing how kind her sister was to others. After 3 days, Luna had shared with Manisha and successfully learned many things. She even cooked for everyone herself and impressed Ruth with it because, in a short time, she could cook at the same level as her sister, who greatly valued food and commented that they should take advantage of the good weather to teach the village to Luna. Ruth agreed, and Manisha decided to go look for clothes for the girl, so she brought her a dress and said that she could help her put it on. But Luna felt afraid and took her dress, deciding to go change by herself, making Manisha confused because she didn't know if she had done something wrong. But Ruth knew that Luna was afraid her sister would see the rune and decided not to treat her the same way. After a while, Ruth went out with Luna and explained that in the village, there weren't many things like the Adventure Guild because it was a rather small village and only had a blacksmith and a pharmacy. At that moment, they arrived at the blacksmith's place, which was Milna's father, and when he saw her, he immediately asked if she came to give him grandchildren, hoping there would be more in-laws like that. Ruth introduced Luna and requested before leaving because when she was in town, she lost her sword and it would be very helpful for her to get a new one. The man agreed to make it for her without any problem because it would be like a help and told her that while he worked, she had to look down. Ruth agreed and decided to take Luna there. When they were there, he explained that monster vegetables were plants that eventually turned into monsters. But because they consumed mana, they could be grown in any season, making them suitable for their village. As they talked, 2 annoying kids came up to Ruth asking if Luna and he were dating. But then an old woman came and told the kids to go away and do something better than bothering. Luna then recalled how she had been forced before and made to work with many other children, so she was shocked by the memory. Ruth introduced the old woman as Jiggy, the village pharmacist responsible for providing medicine for her sibling. Jiggy commented that Luna bore a striking resemblance to Manisha and expressed slight regret that her medicine wasn't as potent as hoped, but Ruth said she was very grateful for all her help. Jiggy felt better and asked them to help gather some vegetables. Ruth, Luna, and several other children spent the afternoon collecting vegetables while having fun. As they returned home, Ruth asked Luna for her thoughts on the village. Luna replied that she felt good about its people and was happy to have arrived where she was so loved. Then she decided to be honest and took Ruth's hand, placing it on her chest, and revealed that she had a rune on her chest and that she was not human but made for war in a neighboring country known as Brunnels. She cried and apologized for not telling him earlier because she was afraid that if he knew, he would lose his life. Ruth revealed that he also had a secret because he knew from the beginning what she was because he saw her rune. Luna asked why he decided to help her if he knew she wasn't human. Ruth explained that long before he arrived in the village, he lived with his siblings on the city streets where they suffered a lot. When he found her in the middle of the road, he saw in her eyes the same pain he had when he was suffering, so he decided to help her so she could live as a free human. He said he couldn't be human because he was a homunculus and believed it would be a simple illusion, but Ruth replied that he was also following an illusion because he hoped to find the sacred treasure at the end of the labyrinth, which he didn't know if it was true, but he hoped he could save his sister from her illness with the wish he could fulfill because of that. They both had the same impossible illusion, but that didn't stop him from continuing to believe that one day he would succeed. Luna was motivated to hear that and decided to live more freely and without hiding feelings or secrets, which made Ruth happy, and they promised to be okay from now on. When they arrived home, Luna decided to confess to Manisha that she was a homunculus and apologized for hiding it, which was not strange to Manisha because her sibling was always like that. Deciding to help those unwanted by others the next day, some people from the village gathered to clean up one of the public places. Ruth spoke with Luna, who was very helpful, and at that moment Manisha came in with cold tea for everyone. Luna was surprised to see that all the children wanted to go to Bisha right away, even though Ruth was the first to escape to drink tea for the first time after refreshing herself. Ruth couldn't help but worry about her sibling because she had helped a lot and didn't want her to get worse, but she said she didn't want to be a burden and could also help with some tasks. One of the boys offered a training duel to Ruth because he had returned to the village. Ruth agrees, but they have to do it after he duels with Phil, who is surprised but eventually accepts. After that, they leave the place and prepare for the battle. Ruth is excited because, against her, he doesn't need to hold back and can try out new skills. Phil congratulates and starts the battle, although, for a few seconds, no one moves. Phil is the first to attack and starts striking with her sword. Ruth defends and realizes that the girl is quite strong. Meanwhile, Manisha explains to Luna that her brother and Phil are the strongest in the village, so they could go try out in the towns because of their exceptional skills, surpassing the other children. Ruth is slightly disturbed seeing his sister and failing to seize the opportunity to attack her, which leaves him scratched. Ruth says he'll utilize his skills and loads an attack, his sword glowing, and with one slash, eliminates Phil's shield. It falls to the ground, and Ruth wins the duel. Everyone is surprised to see that Ruth can now use attacking skills, but more impressively, he eliminated Phil's shield with one blow. Ruth tells the girl that he has become stronger over the past few years, explaining that he managed to defeat her thanks to his ability called Vital Conversion, where he uses the lost shield in battle and transforms it into enhanced strength. Although he can't always use it, now he realizes he's very strong because he can turn small scratches into powerful blows. He can no longer defend his shield, which means from now on, he can fight against strong enemies and not just defend as he did before. He can help and fight more. The other children are amazed and approach to ask him some questions, while Manisha looks proudly at her brother, but wonders if one day she could be that strong too. That night, Manisha dreams of her childhood again when she was alone and crying because she didn't see her parents or her siblings, while people commented on her and the fact that they left her because she had an incurable disease. Even they felt guilty because they knew she wouldn't have much time left to live, but at that moment, her brother came and hugged her tightly because he was happy to find her. Manisha wakes up in the middle of the night very surprised and unable to contain her bad feelings because even though her brother always protected her and never left her, she felt that because of her, her brother couldn't be fully happy as he always had to watch her closely. The next day, Ruth goes to greet his sister who is preparing breakfast. He can't look at her directly, which makes Ruth wonder why. At that moment, Luna arrives late to help because she woke up too early. Manisha joked with the girl about how rushed she was, and Luna said she wanted to help because they helped her to have a better life. So she asked why Ruth and Manisha could do so many things. Ruth could fight and had advanced knowledge, while Manisha could cook many dishes and had extensive knowledge of other things. Ruth explained that when they lived on the streets, nobles from the city wanted to help all the youth living in poor conditions, so they enrolled them in the Night Academy, and that's where they learned everything they know now. This reminded Manisha of how other girls talked about her brother and how bad she felt that she couldn't progress because she had to take care of him. Ruth called Manisha back to the present and told her that he would go to the village if she needed something. Manisha said she didn't need anything and that she was fine, but Luna still watched her closely because she suspected it wasn't true. After that, Manisha went to her room and kept thinking about what they experienced at the academy because Ruth was praised by all his friends who spoke very highly of him and believed he would become a very good knight someday. Manisha was proud of her brother's kindness, but as she walked through the academy halls, she overheard some girls also talking about Ruth. They commented on the idea that the boy would become an adventurer to help his sister, something they found regrettable because Ruth would make a very good knight, but because he had to help his sister, he would miss out on a great opportunity. This made Manisha feel bad because she didn't want to be an obstacle to her brother achieving the best in his life. While she was thinking about this, Luna entered the room and asked if she was okay. Manisha answered that she was just remembering some things and decided to ask her what she would do in her situation because she wanted to know how she would treat someone who missed their best chance to have a better life by leaving everything that could have been a happier life just to not leave them alone, without realizing that she could get more if she chose a different life. Luna replied that she didn't know what she would do because no one had ever done so much for her, but she knew that Manisha was talking about Ruth and advised her to speak directly to her brother because if there was anything she knew. Ruth's mind was very different and that in his heart there was always the idea of helping because even he saved her as an illegal muscle. Manisha felt a little bad because she didn't want to rely too much on her brother, and that's why sometimes she even tried to distance herself a little because she felt that she was just a burden and didn't let him be truly happy. Luna told her again that she should talk directly to her brother because she shouldn't didn't assume that Ruth already knew everything she thought, and it was best to be honest. Manisha felt with her ability that Ruth was back and started to get nervous, but still decided to go and talk to her brother. Although she was very scared, Luna gave her support, and Manisha decided to ask if he was happy with the life he had. Ruth was surprised and answered that he was happy and enjoyed life very much. Manisha didn't understand why he could live happier and decided to ask why he chose to save her when he was in need. Ruth replied that it was the best decision he ever made and he had no regrets at all because without realizing it, he had saved her long before. Manisha didn't understand what he meant.